कृपया ध्यान दीजिए. The language used on the podcast may not be fit for consumption. We warn you, tread carefully. But listen, yaar, don't be so conservative.
When I was a young lad, which quite frankly would be up to last weekend, I remember the one thing that I kept telling people, and I'm talking about when I was about 8, 10, 12, maybe not more than that, is that I wanted to be a writer. And I remember most of the mothers in the class or the other kids were very happy with that because there was nobody else who wanted to be a writer. They all had dreams of strange dreams, but some are good, some are odd. But mine was something that everybody was like, yay, everybody likes a writer or an aspiring writer. So today we've got the top, the pinnacle, the big gun, the alpha, the one and only, and who doesn't know? And if you've lived in India and beyond, of course, but if you've lived in India and you speak the English language, this is the name that there's no way this name will not have touched you in some way or form by the time you were in your third or fourth standard and beyond that as well. Ladies and gentlemen, the legendary Ruskin Bond is with us. We welcome him. I will play high fits because he's mentioned Menuhin, and as a lover of the violin myself, I will go above Menuhin and play him high fits himself. Uh, but here it is, Songs of the Forest. There you go. Sorry, Song of the Forest. Get that right. Very much. Ruskin Bond, I'm sure you get this all the time. Wherever you go, people must be touching your feet and watching the ground ahead of you. And I mean, they must be driving you nuts after some time. But got to tell you, honestly, not too many people. Not to say that I'm in any shape or form a famous person, but not too many people excite me or intimidate me. But you're Ruskin Bond. I can't believe it. Growing up, I can't believe I actually get to meet Ruskin Bond.
Well, I'm the sort of person who gets intimidated very quickly, basically a shy character. And if anybody tries to touch my feet, I flee. I find it very embarrassing.
I,
So,
I,
but it's great to see you, and I've always wanted to see you and to know if you really are, if you're a real person, and and there
you
you
sound
are.
like my wife now.
Hmm? All right, there you are in flesh and blood.
There
So
you go.
thank you. It's nice to be with you. Mm.
But let me before we kick off, I try to make some notes because there's little. I don't think we have enough time for this book. But I just spoke to somebody from my own past in the sense that we grew up together. And because when you think Ruskin Bond, immediately there's so much attached to that. It's like it opens up like a treasure trove of memories and everything else because you go back to school, college. And this is
Yes.
not just me. This is the story of a lot of people
Mm.
in this country. And I just we've forgotten because I haven't read you for a long time. Just how and pardon me for praising you on your face, how beautiful and simple your storytelling style is and how profound it is at the same time. And I mean, it was such a quick read. I at 2 o'clock, Sparsh, who runs this program now, we have a problem with producers. They drop like flies. Maybe COVID, maybe something else. And he at 2 o'clock messaged me, have you read the book, etc. And I hadn't. That's 2 o'clock. And in 2 hours, I basically run to the book, and it was a really, really
Wonderful.
great read. Yeah,
You
it
read
was like being a
faster
kid
than I
again.
do.
No,
Mm.
I can't do that anymore. I feel like I was transported to 13 or 14 when I was voracious and I could read a book a day. And I mean, it would just fly.
Yes,
So, yeah,
yes. Mm.
let me get that out of the
Uh,
way
I,
and just tell you.
mm. I still read 2 or 3 books a week. I'm a great reader. I have to confess, I think I'm a reader first and a writer second, because all my life, well, if say I write for an hour in the morning, I'll spend at least 2 hours with a book later on. So I'm really a reader, and it goes back to my school days. And
And, and
yes, it was because I was a bookworm and a lover of books that I wanted to write to and to emulate my favorite writers. Not write like them, but to be like them. And so there it is, 70 years ago. It's been a long literary journey, but a good one. And it's had its ups and downs, and I've had my failures and a few successes, and here I am still doing it.
but in a sense, Ruskin, can I call you
Mm.
Ruskin, by the way?
Please, please,
I'm now 50
please,
years old.
Cyrus.
I can't say uncle and Mr. Bond, sir, and G and all that. I mean, that's just
Uh,
so. By the end of the show, I'm sure I'll be saying Russ. It'll be too much.
Rust is
Uh,
all right. No,
yeah.
Rust.
No, I shall pay the adequate respect because you
Mm.
surely deserve it. No, I was just saying that the one thing I noticed, and correct me if I'm wrong, is that I think from the beginning although it's not really part of the book, but it's there towards the end when you're reading it. You were always going to be a writer. I think at 16 or something, you sort of know that. There is no other mention of anything else, as far as I can
Yeah,
see.
you're right. It was the one thing I was good at, apart from football, and I did want to be a football player. But at least
Wow.
now in my 80s, I'm still writing stories. Whereas kicking a football about isn't. I mean, I did try, not too long ago. Some kids were playing football down the road, and the ball came bouncing towards me, and I gave it a mighty kick. The ball flew away, but I was hopping about in agony because I'd forgotten I had gout in my left foot. So it took me a
Wow.
day or two to recover.
Ouch.
So football was out, and so was tap dancing. I wanted to be a tap dancer at one time, like Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire. But I lost the figure very early. I didn't have the figure for it.
Now
So
that you
so
mention it, tap dancing it's phenomenal.
yeah.
I haven't seen that for a long time. But as a younger man, I also tried my hand
Yeah, it
watching
was
as
big
the
in
aforementioned
back in
Fred
the
Astaire, Gene Kelly.
1940s, that time, and a lot of
But it's much tougher, Ruskin, than people think, because when you see it, it doesn't appear to be that much going on except for
no,
foot
yes,
movement. But
right.
if you
It's
try
you
to
have
do it,
it's quite athletic, isn't it? Yes.
it is, it
Right.
is, and
But
it's
sort
very
of
fast.
it's you don't see it now. It's sort of gone out of fashion.
Yeah, but I'm sure it'll come back in some shape or form because it's a highly
Yeah, it could.
it's
It's
cardio
always
worthy exercise also, I'm sure, for people. But
yeah. And I'm not a
it's
great one for exercise, but tap dancing would have been one
and
way of
and
doing
and may I apologize to the listeners for discussing cardio and exercises with Ruskin Bond instead of the book, which is why we're here. Song
it.
of the Forest. I suppose if people know only a little about you, they'll always think of you and the hills, you and Masuri. I think we all know that without really knowing enough about you. We'll know that it's there, a footnote which will be there
Yes.
in your head. So
Like,
yeah,
yeah, I've been here so long, I guess that's it. I've just become part of the mountain, like an old tree, sort of leaning over the hillside and watching the world go by.
old trees, they're the best, Mr. Bond,
Yes.
the very best. But some I think when you're in England at some point, I don't know, it's because of the girl going back to Vietnam or what exactly. You seem to pine for India at that point as well. So
Yes.
can I?
Yes, yeah,
Forgive
that's
me.
true. After finishing school, when my mother shipped me off to England and to relatives, I I felt very homesick, and but it was out of that homesick that I wrote my first novel, hmm, which was set in my last year in India, and when I found a publisher after rewriting it two or three times, it wasn't easy. In those days, they gave you a small advance, not a small advance, a standard advance of £50, and that was enough to bring me back to India. £40 was the
By the Polish ship, yeah.
ship, yeah, those old steamers, and
You had that Indian touch in you. You looked for the cheapest option, which I immediately said, okay, he's Indian. That's good enough for me. Yeah,
yes, the
yeah.
Polish ship. Yeah, I remember it was considered an unlucky ship, and things did happen. Somebody fell overboard in
One
the
person
night,
fell overboard. Yeah.
and they never found him. And then when we got to Bombay, Mumbai now, it was the ship caught fire, and there were fire engines coming in from all directions. I got off well in time though.
And they stole your. Hey, there's one thing we have in common. They took your stuff. The customs guys. They took all your perfumes or your what was it?
Yeah, they did. Yes, they weren't very sympathetic. And they weren't expensive perfumes. I'd bought them in Gibraltar. Gibraltar then was actually all the shops were Indian owned. And they were these perfumes were locally made. They weren't very good actually. So I don't think it helped him very much with his girlfriend, even if he did use it that evening.
Sort of karma bouncing around.
Yes.
Can I want to go in order as much as we can with as much time. I've made a few notes, but I just want to go, since we mentioned the Vietnamese girl and since you
Uh,
talking about it
you-
openly. No, I didn't understand why she ran away because of the communist regime. I mean,
oh, right
what was
now
her
she
deal
didn't
with?
run away. She had her parents living in what was Viet Minh in the communist part of Vietnam then.
Right,
And there was a civil war going on,
right.
or about to break out, I think. And so she finally had had to go home because she was having, I think, so I was told, some difficulties staying on in England. Um, and so she went back to Viet to what was
Viet Minh.
Hanoi.
Yeah.
Yeah, not Saigon,
Wow.
but Hanoi, which was in the communist-controlled part of
So it could
Vietnam.
be like a casualty of war, not to be
Yes,
not
yes,
implicitly
my love
flippant,
affair
but
was a
yeah.
casualty war, in a way.
Yeah. So that, in perspective, you can say, okay, fair enough. I mean, that's a whole country being torn apart, and so
Yes,
and this was
yeah. Well,
just.
look at what's happening today. Even countries are
Yeah.
always being torn apart. It doesn't seem to end. Mm, mm,
We will reserve the right to speak about this country. You're safe in your
mm.
hills, but we have my
Yes.
hills, Malabar Hills, not so safe. All right, let's go into the book firstly. And my God, how prolific you are! I think at some point when Abbas joins us, we should mention all the books you've written, all the short stories you've written. I think the forward also for those listening.
Yeah.
I don't know if there's anyone more prolific in writing short stories, and they're fantastic short stories. In fact, in this book, what I've picked up also are there's so many moments you can sit and do them as anecdotes, over a drink to on a campfire or something. I mean, and they're all in my head right now because I've just read them. So let's go back to how you saved the deer. I found that very interesting because
Mm.
you chose to,
Yes. Well, that was
but you
right.
deny the leopard a meal in a sense. So
This cottage was right down in the. It's not where I'm staying now. I'm on top of the hill, and there's no forest close by. But when I first came up to this hill station, I lived on the outskirts. It was right in the forest, this cottage, and you open the window, and well, you could step out into a tree. Actually, it was so close, the trees, and yes, one night this
barking
little
deer.
cocker,
Yeah.
barking deer, ran into the compound in a panic, and the storeroom downstairs was open, and it took refuge in there. And then when we heard this, I had a companion with me. When we heard this leopard giving out its grunting, sawing sound,
Use the word
and
cough.
yes,
Leopard's
we,
cough.
we went and shut the door of the storeroom and locked the cocker in so the leopard couldn't get to it. So, and finally, in frustration, it went away. And next day we let it out, and hopefully it was safe again. We didn't see it after that.
Yeah, I just brought it up because sometimes conservationists talk about the fact that you don't interfere with the natural order of things in a sense. But I guess, I mean, you're a human
Yes.
being and you hear an animal, and
Well, since
yeah,
the natural order of things had interfered with me by coming into the house, I felt I also had a right to interfere.
good point. The Mehman culture of our subcontinent comes into play then, and you're a good host. I should have set it up in the beginning. So right at the top, you talk of the subtle sounds of the forest vis-a-vis the obvious elephant trumpet and tiger roar,
Yes.
etc., that we all know of. But you talk of much more interesting sounds which perhaps our ears won't pick up.
Birds,
But
yes.
yeah,
Birds, insects, crickets, and especially now with the monsoon coming, you hear this tremendous orchestra, chorus of cicadas. They all um, start. They're not actually singing. They do it with their legs. They rub their legs against their bodies, and it sounds like a violin, like a violin.
I think that's the
And
first pornographic line I've heard from Ruskin Bond. They do it
when
with
I
their
see
legs.
when I was in that down in that cottage, and there was an old lady next to me who was a bit deaf, and I said she thought I was referring to the girls singing in the school up on the hill. When sh- I said, Mrs. Biggs, the singing is beautiful today, isn't it? And she said, yes, Mr. Bond, they do it with their legs, don't they? So.
Do they
Uh,
really?
Mm, So it's cicada time now, actually. Although if my window's open, I'm hearing car horns all the time now because I'm right on the road that takes the tourists up to the top of the mountain. So and I think it's a reaction to the COVID epidemic. A lot of people are coming to hill stations and wanting to get away from their cities and
Yeah.
towns, and
Why do
can't
they
blame.
feel COVID can't find them in the hills? COVID will find you in the hills. Leave Ruskin Bond's hills
It
alone.
seems to follow you everywhere, but no, we've been lucky up here. Yeah, it's not too
Yeah, in
bad.
the same breath, you went after our common enemy, the public works department. Those people have been after our lives for all our lives, and I
All
know you
our
said
lives.
it in a
True
casual
enough. You
manner,
can't
but
blame
they
them.
Yeah, they unhoused you from your earlier dwelling and just
That's
built a
right.
road for the greater good of mankind as they
The,
claim, and
the
destroyed
road went
flora
right
and
through.
fauna.
Mm. And even this road where I am now, originally it was a footpath long ago, and then it got turned into a motor road. Yeah? So that's what happens somehow. Footpaths nowadays
I love
keep
your
getting wider and take all kinds of traffic.
That's true. It starts as a footpath and soon it's a town. But
Yes.
I love the phrase you've used, because we were talking in the same breath about predators and the leopard and the deer, etc. And then you say the greater predator, and then you mentioned the public works department. So I thought that was spot on, really. All right, let's plunge. Um, Doctor Cosmos. So is he a fraud or not? I get the feeling that you're.
He's actually that story, and the character in it is based on a real person who was made a name for himself up here about 15, 20 years ago only. And yes, he attracted huge numbers of people who were sick, who had ailments or incurable diseases. And a lot of them swore by him. They got better and felt better. But then he got sick for a chap after some time and sort of
This is after
dwindled
he goes
away.
to Delhi. He
Yeah,
goes to
so I've,
Delhi.
I've actually sort of fictionalized
Oh,
that person and those incidents. So it is actually, there was really somebody like that. I've changed the name, of course.
so
And
was he a genuine doctor, or because?
he 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 was a physicist, as far as I remember.
Wow.
Yes, he spent some years in Germany, and he was very impressive. And he didn't seem look like a fraud. He put it all down to some sort of solar energy, which he sort of absorbed and then transferred to the patient or the person who wasn't keeping well. I didn't ask for any treatment myself, because I'm quite happy to bask in the sun without expecting any other benefits from it. But he had a lot of people did come to him, and he was swore that he was effective. The only thing is, I think after some time they reverted to their original problems or diseases. So maybe the cure wasn't a very lasting one. Might have been psychological, I guess.
Oh, so temporary sort of cure. But
Many
okay,
things
fair
are
enough.
psychological, yeah.
If you want to read more, or rather, if you read the book, you'll be able to find out more. We don't want to give away everything when we have Ruskin Bond himself here. We can't have him revealing every detail, so we'll just try and skip through as much as we can. This is the most important, not important. I think this was. I was just telling somebody on the phone. This Sohan character. I mean, it's really it's a 10-minute read in terms of time. The entire
Mm.
thing is probably less than a chapter,
Yes.
encompassing the Sohan story. But people, if you're listening, you've got to just, this story is, it's really scary, and it came out of nowhere, because suddenly we went from another sort of passive, interesting, well
Yes.
described sort of anecdote, and then suddenly it went into this, and then you're waiting to see, and there are lots of, there's a bit of twist and turns. It's a who done it, almost not a who done it, but it's a chase for the who done it person in
That's
just a short span of
rhododendron
time.
in the mist. Yes, the one
Stuck,
about the being followed by the
my
this
God, the one where you're stuck inside the house. I'm like, what are you saying? Why would Ruskin, is it true, Ruskin Bond, the story firstly?
well, I of course expanded it. It again. So many things of my stories grow out of things that happen to me or that I see around me, mm, and something like that did happen. But I've sort of
But there was a
in
guy
the
who killed his
story in writing,
benefactor,
I let it
and
uh, go on.
there was this
That
gentleman who
book
killed his benefactor and then went after you when he
that book was
when
true
you
about
recognized.
being followed down to the Pathankot railway station and this character trying to get into the compartment um, while the train was moving. Something like that did happen. But it's probably why it's quite vivid when I write it in the story.
Yeah, I just
So
kept wondering.
I had a few minor adventures in my younger days, but um, fortunately survived them.
but the way
I
that the
think
tale is told, it's more like, wrong place, wrong time, if you like. Nothing else.
the
It's not anything on your part. Again, read the book to find out more. Just a lot of variety for people listening in the book. The whole style for the modern generation, I think, I don't know whether you would have done that knowingly, but I suppose not. It's for the modern generation with the short attention span of people like me and much younger than me. I think this is fantastic because you don't have to be paying attention sometimes. You can go from one to the other. It
yes,
just
even
weaves its way.
true. I'm that sort of reader too. I can't read very fat long novels now. I need either short stories or or detective stories, crime fiction, biographies. It's something that I can get through quickly. I suppose as we get older too, we maybe lose patience a bit with very long literary works, and
No,
attention
but
span does get less.
if I could again risk praising you too much here and offending you in reverse ways, um, but the thing is that they're short, but
Mm,
it's like a bountiful story. It's not like cropped a story and given it to us. The
mm,
Sohan
mm,
story, I don't notice how long or short it is. It's only in hindsight. I said all this happened and it's only been a few minutes. It's just like that.
yes,
But
there's nothing very long. I think they can all be 15 minutes would probably be um, the time limit. Actually, it goes back to the when I was in my 20s and 30s. I used to send short stories to the BBC in London. They used to have a short story slot, 15-minute slot. So it had to fit into a 15-minute slot. So I got into the habit of doing stories roughly 2,000, 2,500 words for that slot. So it became a habit after that. So sometimes unwittingly I'm writing to a certain um, to a certain length limit or to a certain discipline which goes back dozens of years. Must break out of it. Shouldn't get stuck in.
no, don't break out of it. I think it's fantastic. Yeah. Not to put anyone down, but sometimes people take so long to get to the point. It's like in those corporate meetings where somebody asks a question which is longer than the answer. You can just you might hear
Uh,
the magic flute playing in the background. That's my father's phone, and I will not be able to disengage it. But the music is Mozart, so if that helps. Uh,
mm.
I wanted to ask you about that also. So you got to see Yehudi Menuhin live, as in playing the
Yes,
violin in
yes,
front of you.
I did. I did. And I was taken to St. Paul's Cathedral by my publisher, that is Diana Athill, who was the editor and publisher who took on my first book. And she took me to St. Paul's Cathedral, and
St.
it was
Paul's.
about a performance of very classical music. And some, but everybody who was there was, listened in hushed silence. And when it was over, the Queen Mother, then the mother of the present Queen, who also attended this recital, came down the aisle and kept asking people on either side if they'd enjoyed the performance. And she asked me too, and I said, "Yes, ma'am, I did." That was what else could one say? That she,
Exactly.
uh,
What kind of question is that? And was he notoriously bad tempered or something? He would bang the violin on your head if you said anything else. Yeah.
I didn't know much about him, but I was prejudiced against violins in a way because when I was at prep school in Simla and Bishop Cotton's, when I was a very small boy, we had a headmaster, Mr. Priestley, who was very nasty to me, and he would be playing the violin every evening, and I used to sort of glare at him from the veranda and wish that his violin would break down or something like that. So I was, and I don't think he played very well either. So, but so it was a change, maybe listening to a real violin player.
Wow, it's the book is so you go back to England, then you come back here. I mean, there's a lot happening. It's not just the hills. It's a lot about the hills, obviously, because that is the
Yes,
book.
but
But
these are all fairly recent stories. They're not old stories. They're not very early ones. They've done all mostly written during this 2 or 3 years of COVID epidemic, written at home when one didn't go out. And I've written other things too, but they seem to, as you say, be a variety, put them all together like a Christmas stocking.
No, I don't know. Whether, again, I don't know whether it's conscious or subconscious at work, but I just like the way it goes everywhere because there's so much variety. You never
Mm.
get stuck in any sort of geographical location for long. People they change, so it's almost like episode after episode. I don't know in the modern context would be the right phrase to use, but it's actually a very fast read, and I'm proof of that. So I'm
Well,
I'm a brand ambassador, Ruskin
I'm a
Bond.
fast writer too. Maybe that's why I sit down. I want to finish the story, and usually it's done in 2 or 3 sittings at the most. Any story, a day or two. That's why I like short stories. Whereas if I set out on a novel, by the time I'm halfway through, I'm probably sick of it. So I prefer the shorter
Hey,
genre.
Ruskin, now that you mentioned your writing process and style, that'll be very interesting to ask you. So, do you use the laptop? Do you use an old typewriter from back in the day? Do you
No, I
write with
write
a
by
pen?
hand. Yes, I write by hand. I enjoy it because I used to type, but then was started getting a sort of a stiff neck,
Macking,
spondylitis.
yeah.
So I find it more comfortable writing by hand. Also, it's in a way more personal. I feel I'm in direct contact with my characters in a way, and there's something sensual about it almost. And I like
Oh,
I like paper.
yeah.
I like a pen, but I don't use fountain pens because I get ink all over my hands. So I'd use a
True.
ballpoint. I'll use a ballpoint. So
You're
right,
having
yes,
a
now
conversation with me.
my publishers are very tolerant. They don't insist on my sending in a typed
You're
printout or
Ruskin Bond. They can hardly say go and clean it up. What are you saying? Huh. Yeah.
Ruskin Bond. But you remind me that I read this a few years back. This lady in a club bar in Dehradun, and she said, "Yes, I know who you are. You're that writer fellow, Bunskin Rond." and, and after that, friends who were with me, they were calling me Bun all the time for some time. It was
Oh,
long ago.
if we had a closer friendship, I would too. That's hilarious. Bunskin Ron, yeah. So you're in August company. As high as you are in the pantheon of writers, as low as I am, I also write by hand. I can't bear to
That's
type; takes
wonderful.
too long, and yeah. So people don't understand, but your thoughts flow. I suppose the way you began is difficult to make that change and go at the
Yes.
same pace as your mind with an instrument, etc.
Also,
So
I've read the story in my head beforehand, so it's only a matter of actually putting it down in decent words and language and making it
do you
readable.
make corrections, or are you a Mozart like writer where it
Hardly
just
any.
goes?
Hardly any. I might just cross out a word here and there, or go back. Might just occasionally in my hurry, I might make a spelling mistake, so I correct that. But otherwise,
Or
I don't. I'm too lazy to edit.
although in the present woke culture and the times we live in, sometimes you may have to rewrite words out of
Yeah,
force. Yeah.
that's true. You have to be true. Think twice sometimes about what you write.
Yeah.
Um, it wasn't always like that, but there you are.
Wow. Okay, we won't
Mm.
put Ruskin Bond on the spot and all that. I'm sure that's a story for another day, another time.
That's one is a different.
I think we'll be
Mm.
running out of time, but I would have loved to talk about Frank Brain character. I just want to
Yeah,
know if that's a true story. It appears to. You mentioned your mom,
it's
etc.
pretty well. It is true, yes. Although it happened of course, a long
There's
time
a
back.
beautiful
I only
couplet that
write about. I write about real people I've known only after many years have passed because I don't want to hurt the feelings of
correct.
anyone who actually was close to them or knew them.
Hmm.
So of course, this incident goes back to my childhood when I was very small. So, and Frank, if Mr. Brain of the story must have passed away about 50 years ago. So anyway, um,
But there's a very poetic.
otherwise, I've
I think
never now never been sued or uh, threatened with any legal action for libel or anything like that. Mm. Uh,
well,
Although I
here's
write a
to
lot about real people, and sometimes people don't recognize themselves. They don't.
yeah,
Uh,
because they don't think of themselves as that. Yeah,
that's not me. It can't be me.
yeah, yeah.
Mm.
Well, I don't think you're very unkind to him because at the
No,
end you quoted a poem, I think, or a rhyme
yeah,
where you say
yeah,
he cared
and,
for nobody and nobody cared for him, sort of
uh,
words to that effect, and which I thought
yes,
was absolutely spot on. And then you think of so many people, hopefully
mm,
not oneself, but so many people who are like that, and
yes,
live that
yes. Who
life
live entirely
of
for themselves.
flamboyance. Yeah, but then the end was,
And then there's
ironically
nobody
nothing
left
like that.
for you.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
And
Does
then
happen. Mm.
please read the book to find out more. I'm not
I'm,
revealing
I'm,
each and
I'm
everything.
so glad you read all those stories. Sometimes people interview me or talk to me about my books without having read them. At least you,
No,
you read
I
them.
didn't realize how your writing style suits me because I haven't read you since school. But
Oh,
yeah, but it really suits me. And when I say suits me, I'm sure it
and
suits a lot of
my
people.
style hasn't changed much either.
Yeah, because it's quick, and I just enjoy that. There's no beating around the bush, and you're going to so many places. You're always interested. I mean, Frank
Mm.
Brain is in the middle of very different experiences, and his is
Yes.
a totally different tale from the others.
Yes.
And I don't think also there's a judgmental call at any point. You've just told it like it is, and that very sad. Well, not sad. It is what it is at the end, which sums up
Yes.
his life and his life's philosophy, if
Well,
you like. But we have to take a break. Before that, I'll just quickly mention. I wish I would like you to, after the break, at least get the suitcase, the old suitcase. Again, I totally my empathy level with that. I can't tell you, and I'm sure a lot of people reading will have huge empathy levels with something similar in their lives, as that symbolizes a lot of things, I suppose. And you'll tell us that after the break as well. Share Singh, I don't think we'll have time for the chocolates, Kiran, Doppelganger. I want to ask if that's a true story if we have time as well. So much
which
to
one?
talk about. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, Ruskin, say.
Which one did you say you'd ask me if it was true?
Oh, the Doppelganger story, because
Oh, that one. Well, I
I
made that.
again that was slightly that was made up, right?
Yes, yes. The characters are real, but I,
But
the
you
rest of
didn't
it,
actually see. I don't want
yes,
to give
it's
it
a
away. I don't want to give it away, but you didn't actually see her. And then the guy says that such and such thing happened at a shoot a month back, and
yes.
you.
That part is true. The shoot in up in Darjeeling, where I meet Satyajit Ray, and this lady was his biographer. No?
Right.
So
Maria
yes, well,
Seton.
that's true. It's
Yeah.
the second part of the story which I
Okay.
fictionalized. I
Okay.
turned into a sort of little ghost story.
Yeah. Wow. This one, like, I can't even put, if I, and I've just read it, so it's fresh in my mind. I can't even describe the book as one genre.
Mm.
It's got its own.
Yeah.
It's like it's a Ruskin Bond,
Yes, it's quite a mix, isn't it?
story.
Now that you mention it.
Yeah. Because so many different things happening. We will take a break. A great
But
privilege to have Ruskin Bond on our show. We've had awful guests for the last 5 years, but this raises the bar. It's going to be very hard for the next guest who follows him. I can tell you that. Ruskin Bond, the legend, with us. The name of the book, let me just pick it up and show everybody. Song of the Forest. There it is. Hope I,
it's nicely
there
brought
you
out.
go. Yeah. Sorry if we had Malaika, it would have more
Mm.
oomph appeal, but it's just me. And we're taking a quick break. When we come back, Abbas will join us. He has never read a book in his life, Ruskin Bond. This is a generation of Indian minds that are developed only on the internet. So I
Mm.
apologize. It'll be very difficult. You'll have to talk to him like he's an infant, and we'll
Mm.
have to explain the alphabet from A to Z. Uh, but Ruskin Bond is still with us. We're taking a break, and we'll be back after this.
Good.
Hello, everyone. It's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On IVM Likes, Jalasmi, Vinay, Sumit, and Snehil fawn over Shah Rukh Khan and his 30-year-long career. On Don Baika Gappa Aika, Aparna and Avanti explore the difficulties women face at the workplace. On Audio Gyan, Kedar talks to Jayasimha Chandrasekhar, founder of Atelier Prati, about printmaking. On Press Decode, Sara, Vagda and Prafulla discuss free speech in the light of Mohammad Zubair's arrest. And on Postcards from Nowhere, Utsav takes us through the stunning decline of the Irish language. We've got some exciting news for you. IVM Podcasts has just launched its merch, and our first line is out now. Head to the IVM Podcasts website and click on the Shop tab to check out our first collection of t-shirts. Do follow us on social media via IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And remember, if you're enjoying this show or any of our other shows for that matter, do tell a friend. Also, don't forget to rate us on any platforms that you're listening on. And you can also check us out on YouTube. We're also doing a small listener survey to better understand how you respond to our shows and advertising on the network. We would really appreciate if you could spare a few minutes to fill it. It helps us build better shows for you. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Capgemini, Intel vPro, and Intel Future Bana Wonderful with Intel-powered laptops.
All right, we're back from the break, and we're joined by a beautiful figure. I mean Ruskin Bond, and also less glamorous personality, out of work comedian, actor, aspiring singer, politician, and right wing hater, wokist, Abbas. Abbas,
Thank you so much. Yes,
have you read Ruskin Bond? Because now
I
from
have
this
read
generation, you
lots of
have.
Ruskin Bond. Yes, I
Oh,
have.
very good,
Yes.
very good.
Well, I'm in
Well,
my 30s, so I'm still not
that's true.
exactly
You're an old
young,
man, so
young.
you qualify. Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah, yeah. But I'm sure they're still teaching. My daughter knows. That's why she came up, because she knows it's Ruskin Bond. Or she's not talking to me for reasons I can't explain right now. And she said. So she came out only because it's Ruskin Bond. She's willing to do this. So he's still
Hmm.
reaching out to all the generations. That
Absolutely.
continues.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
But is
for
it
sure.
helping this country? They're not listening to him.
That, yeah, we can use a bit more of that.
Yeah, we could. Abbas, you have a story you want to relate? Yeah.
Yes, I actually attended a session by Mr. Bond in 2011 at the
Well, you
Jaipur
call him Mr.
Literature
Bond. He sounds like
Festival.
MI5.
That's true. Yes. Um, and I remember that it was an early morning session around 9 a.m., which is early for me, not for Cyrus.
Oh, yeah.
But, and I
Early for me.
remember
Yeah.
early for most people, yes.
Yes.
And it was a storytelling session. It was in a wonderful cold Jaipur. Everybody was sitting in a
Okay.
lawn,
Right. Mm.
and you had narrated a story of getting trapped with your sister, I believe, while a tiger was outside your house, and you
Wow.
had about 200 to 250 people enraptured. And then you finished the story, and very casually you said, "I just made all of that up off the top
I
of my
did.
head."
Yes. Yes. Yes.
So,
I remember.
how much of your stories? I mean, I personally believe storytellers are
It's like
essentially,
Sohan. If you're paying attention, Abbas, the Sohan story, he
yeah,
really had me because I absolutely believed it. When you read that, you
This
got to
is,
read it. I
I,
can't. I can't tell you this. You read
I
that
cover it
story.
all by calling myself a fiction writer, but because basically I'm a big liar. Well, so there's that story I told in Jaipur. I made it up about this tiger. Took place in a forest rest house, and I
right,
was alone
correct.
there. And then I was reading a book in the veranda when I saw this tiger sort of circling the rest house and kept coming closer. And then I locked myself. Actually, it's not pure fiction because it's a dream. This is a recurring dream that I've had off and on throughout my life. There are two versions of it. One is that being trapped by this tiger in a guest house. Another was staying in a five-star hotel in Bombay and realizing I didn't have the money to pay the bill. And the days kept passing and the
Tiger's
bill,
the better story.
and I didn't know what I did. It was worse than the tiger.
Yeah, yeah, much worse. Yeah, yeah. Oof.
So,
But the,
so some of my dreams become stories. I do. I keep a dream book. I put down interesting dreams now and then,
Mhm.
and sometimes they turn into stories. And
But could there be a higher compliment, Ruskin, than actually people realizing that they've been had in a sense? Because the
yeah,
stories and the style of writing for this particular one, for sure,
mm,
is it appears that these are coming from your heart and coming from your life, and partly they
yeah,
are. So that's the other
mm,
problem. Partly they are,
mm,
and the descriptive around it is
mm,
always real.
yes.
So it's fantastic.
Some of my stories are actually quite factual and true, like Mr. Brain, like the the um,
Suitcase.
the faith healer. Those stories. But sometimes I'd start with an incident or something that's actually happened, and my imagination runs away with me. Mm.
Mhm.
And
And a certain
Doppelganger
mischief,
turns out
a certain mischief
Doppelganger.
is there in the author as well, huh?
Yes.
As the Jaipur folk found out that day.
Yeah.
I want to.
I,
I have a
I, I
huge.
want to share this picture, which I actually got the novel Delhi is not far, signed by Mr. Bond, and it is
Okay.
it is one of my most precious
Wow.
Oh,
books that I hold to my heart. Thank you so much.
You
thank you.
devil
Thank
Abbas, you waited, didn't reveal this to make sure that
Yeah.
no, you come out looking at like the chamcha of Ruskin Bond, and I come out looking like a fraud. Huh? I'm that doctor,
You
Doctor
know this, you
Cosmos.
know his stories
Huh.
like the back of your hand. So I think we both come across as diehard
No, no,
fans.
no. But that's fabulous that you kept it and you remembered and you brought it
Yeah.
here as well.
Yeah.
But I wanted to just quickly ask Ruskin because huge empathy I felt. There's a section towards the end where he talks about 2 a.m. being the death hour. So and you talk about prostate problems. So 12, 2, and 4 is when you pee. I do exactly the same thing. So I
That's
was
right.
like, what? How does he know me so well? But leaving that aside, the prostate for another day, talking about the 2 a.m., why exactly is it the death hour? I mean, you sort of explained it, but if you could again.
What's that? The
So you
explain what?
divided your you said 12 o'clock midnight. There
Oh,
are people are still around. 4 a.m.
yeah.
Some people are waking up and doing things, but 2 a.m. is that lonely hour. It's like
It
the
is
death hour, the
somehow.
dark hour.
I always wake up at 2 a.m. In fact, I wake up 2 or 3 times in the night. And recently, I've been getting up at about 1 or 2, feeling terribly hungry. And I don't want to disturb anyone in the house. So last night, I slipped out of bed. I crept into the dining room, put on one of the lights. The fridge was empty. I found a bun on the table. So I sliced this bun in half. I buttered it well, and I found some sweet mango chutney, which I put on it and closed it together and ate it. And I created a wonderful mango chutney bun, which was delicious. Then I came back to bed and slept beautifully. I dreamt of kids bathing in mango juice and teachers sucking lollipops and tigers eating strawberries and cream. Not eating up for cocker and barking deer. so, so
Is this
dream,
politically motivated in any way? Even the tigers have to give up meat? I don't know. Oh, wow. Yeah. But
a lot of things happen in the middle of the night, I guess.
now, see, I don't know if you're having us on after the tiger story from
Yeah,
Jaipur. I'm a little
exactly.
worried. Right, Abbas? Did you feel that he's now going to
No,
spin
I
the
really
story
Yeah.
didn't.
and then suck us in and then laugh at us for the next 20 minutes?
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, and that actually happened. I heard this knocking on the front door, and I got up and I saw this 10-foot figure of a woman in black. Probably it's part of the dream, or I imagined it. And I bolted the door. I wasn't going to let her in. And then I went around to my bedroom, and there she was at the window. But that only happened
One
once.
sec.
I
That
thought it
really
was a
happened?
sort of,
No, no, no.
I
Now
thought
I'm
it was
confused. No, 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 no.
I
I'm
thought it
not
was
on
an
any
omen.
medication. People
It's
do
open
note.
interpretation. You
So
you
did it
believe
happen
what
or
you want
not?
to believe.
Huh?
I thought it was an omen, of something bad that was going to happen, but nothing
Like
happened.
like marriage. All right. Okay.
Oh, what did Oscar Wilde say? Marriage is a romance in which the hero dies in the first chapter.
Yeah, that's right. So right. Um, uh, we won't have too much time, but can we squeeze one Abbas? I just want this one story
Sure.
is
Yes.
fascinating. Now I
Yes.
want to know if this is fiction, then I'm screwed totally. But you speak of that old suitcase that you buy as a young lad when you're in
Yes,
England.
yes,
I,
yes, that's a bit of autobiography. Yeah, that's pure autobiography. Didn't exaggerate anything there. It's just a simple story of how that suitcase survived over the years. Really falling to pieces in the end. It did. But
but
it
you
through
bought a
so
second
many
one
years.
on the
Yes,
same trip. You bought a second one which didn't last at all.
that's true. Um, and strangely, the one that lasted was the cheaper one. It was practically
Exactly.
a cardboard suitcase.
So the lesson to be learned, Abbas, is those who are cheap last longer. Remember
Yes,
Yes.
that. Yeah.
Of course.
That's one for my tribe.
Yeah.
All right. So quickly to talk about the book before we do AMAs. Song of the Forest, the one and only Ruskin Bond is back at it. He never stops, actually, the most prolific writer that we can think of, definitely from our shores. And like I said, it's a fantastic read, and I want the next generation to take a look, try the handed reading again. This is the book that will get them back into it, honestly,
thank
because
you.
this is it's got all kinds of things happening. It keeps changing. It's topsy turvy, sort of. You're on a roller coaster ride of sorts, and it's always fun. So that's that for the book.
Yep.
Now we turn our eyes and ears to the nation, or rather the 8 people who are on the podcast. And Abbas, go ahead.
Well, we got a bunch of questions and generally just people writing in to thank you, Mr. Ruskin Bond, for all the stories you've given us. This one particular email comes from Jaya, who writes from Vancouver. She says, "Hello, I'm so excited to be writing in a question for Mr. Bond himself. One of my popular dinner stories for people is when I, as a gawky teen, along with a bunch of kids, met Ruskin Bond at an old hotel in Missouri. It may have been the Savoy, and Ruskin entertained us with some pretty compelling ghost stories about someone who died in one of the rooms. Um, she's asking a question. She asks rather, did you have the proverbial crossroads in life that possibly determined the path of writing for you?
Were there certain crossroads in my life?
Mhm.
Um, no, I wanted to write from the time I was at school. Just as Cyrus said earlier, I was a ambitious uh, writer as a boy at a time when writing wasn't fashionable.
Correct.
Because back in 1950, you didn't become a celebrity as a writer. You weren't known by your face, or because there was no television, there was, the internet, none of the visual media that developed later. You were known by your name. You could, as it happened to me once, I sitting in a studio in London in those years, chatting to another gentleman who was going to give a talk on the BBC. And
Mhm.
after he got up and left, and my producer said, "Do you know who that was, Ruskin?" And I said, "No." He said, "That was Graham Greene." So there I was talking about the weather
Wow.
and chatting with
How
this
didn't you know?
total stranger. I didn't know who he was till the producer told me
Yeah,
later.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
It was him. And he was then at the height of his fame. He'd just
Same.
written the script for The Third Man, and his books were all over the place. So
Mhm.
you were anonymous in a way. So you weren't. So my ambition to be a writer wasn't the idea of becoming famous, like a
Right.
star or a cricketer or something. It was just that I wanted to be a good writer and write books. And that was it. I think the only writer who really pursued fame and publicity in a big way was Hemingway, because he would go out of his way to crash a
Do
plane or
ridiculous things. Yeah.
yeah, sink ship or something. Otherwise, most writers sort of were quite happy to stay at home and
Oh,
not.
I
Right.
think in India, a few modern writers could be accused of such things, but we won't take names and go down that
No,
road.
but yeah, it's
Yeah.
it's because of maybe the
Also,
fact that
you've set a bar with Hemingway, so I don't think the writing skills are on the same level. So we'll leave it.
it's it's
Yeah.
it's it's the age of the celebrity now. So
Fair
Yeah.
people
enough.
like that
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah.
Yep. All
Yeah.
right. The
But
next question comes from Harvesp. Harvesp has asked, Mr. Bond, how do you achieve a combination of simplicity of writing style and depth of subject matter?
I guess it just comes naturally. Um, I have a simple style, but so many fine writers have had simple styles. If you read Somerset Maugham or others like that, they have a very simple
but you
style,
think
but they tell a very deep story sometimes.
Mhm.
And I want people to read me. I don't want to confuse them
But
or baffle them.
I would think that you're entitled to some arrogance as a writer after so many years. But I never feel that while reading it fresh as I did just now a few hours back, and it's still the same. You managed to stay true to whatever style you had, for better or for worse, from the beginning. I don't. Would you say that's fair?
Yeah, no, very fair. My style hasn't changed much. Um, um, I, Themes come from different places, but I often write in the first person, sort of, put myself into the story, and um, which is why sometimes people maybe accuse me of making of exaggerating or making things up, which I do. Well, they're stories, and if I want to be, I keep a journal sometimes, and I try to be honest in that. I wrote an autobiography, Lone Fox Dancing, in which I I haven't told any lies, but like everybody else, you keep something back
Mhm.
in a way. So I don't think anybody can come. The only true biography of a writer is usually written 50 years after he's gone, if
Mhm.
anyone remembers him. So it's hard, very hard to be honest about yourself, because sometimes we don't know ourselves
Mhm.
very well. Sometimes I
True.
think
Also, after
Mm,
the person is gone, I suppose the writer's prejudices for or against also come into it. It's not
mm,
possible to be that balanced.
Right.
yes, that's
So
true. And after all, a writer is by his nature an egoist. I think you have to be a bit of an egoist to be a writer, and to want to put your thoughts and ideas and over on onto others. Um, so one has to keep that ego and control to a certain extent.
Right.
Uh,
this is for you, Abbas, because you're a
I
writer,
know.
you're a comedian, you write your own jokes. I mean, whatever, it's still some form of writing. So your ego has
That's
to be in
true.
check. Yeah.
Yes,
So lesson
I will
learned.
remember that. We just have two more questions. This one comes from Karthik. Karthik says, Mr. Bond, how do you look at the fact that your stories and books have traveled through so many generations? And does it ever worry you that certain stories that you wrote in the past don't hold up that well now?
Well, that's possible. Well, maybe they didn't hold up well to begin with,
Wow. That's
but
not a fair
they're
question.
still around. Some stories are still around. Some of perhaps don't hold up too well, and um,
Why would it not hold up too well? That's just a setting of a
I
time and a
guess his
place.
answer is for someone who's been in writing for
depends
that
on when they
long.
were written. Not much of that I've written is dated because
Right.
there's nothing that I've written that has gone out of print. Now I've been
Correct.
writing
Yeah.
for 70 years,
Hmm.
and everything that I've written is available somewhere in a book, in a
Yes.
collection, and it some books do better than others. Yes, I mean
Hmm.
some stories are popular or well known, others, are not so well known and maybe trivial too.
Hmm.
So, but they're still there.
Right.
uh,
I think we should punish the person who sent that question in. I think his toes
no,
should be
no,
cut off. But I don't understand the point of that question
it's a
because good
reasonable
writing is
question.
good writing. It's got
Reasonable
no date or
question.
time to it. Yeah.
And I ask myself these questions too sometimes.
No,
Uh, I had a I had a
we shall
question, sir. Do
defend
you
your honor. There's no
Hmm?
way we can allow that.
do you
Yeah.
read
Go on.
any contemporary fiction from newer writers?
I get
Books that have,
books sent to me.
yeah.
I get a lot of self-published books, 2 or 3 a week. Huh? Can't read all of those.
Right.
Because I read for pleasure, basically. So I'm reading old favorites,
Mhm.
or sometimes I look for search for books that I might have missed earlier on.
Mhm.
I do, of course, uh,
I
dip
think
into.
Abbas wants to know: do you read Ashwin
Ca-
Sanghi, Chetan Bhagat,
I want to know,
this
can I
new
send in
wave
my
of?
manuscript
I
to
did
him?
I did a show with Chetan Bhagat once in
Right.
Mumbai, and we were both asked what was the book that you remember the most, which had the greatest impression on you when you were a boy or a young.
Yeah.
Oddly enough, he mentioned Oliver Twist by Charles Dickens, and I had mentioned David Copperfield by by Charles Dickens. So
Right.
there was something in common there.
Yeah.
Uh,
Right.
and I
It
had
was the best of times. It was the worst of times. I'll
and I
put it that
had
way.
it's very wicked, Cyrus, isn't he?
Yeah, yeah. All right.
Okay.
No,
The
but
last
yeah.
comment. Yeah. Go ahead, Cyrus.
Go no, go on. Let's
So
squeeze in
last,
the comments.
this
Yeah.
comes from
Mm,
Supratim. Supratim says, "I have no questions, just gratitude. Thank you for
mm.
helping me develop a mind that can think in more ways than one dimension." So
Well,
just a
that's
little
great.
thank you note.
If I can give someone a little happiness, a little joy, or comfort, or some fun, I mean that's something that makes me happy. Mm.
Mhm.
But also, Abbas, you have to understand that with Ruskin Bond, it's like real adulation. You see, with
Yeah.
all of us in the line of work we do, it's all rubbish. But here,
Mhm.
it's real adulation tested by time. Exactly the reverse of that silly question. The sort of we didn't answer in a bad-natured way, but you know what I'm saying. So I wonder what that feels like because you know it's real adulation, and we all get emotional when we're thinking about you, and there's so much involved in that. There's streams of
Yes, it's
consciousness
partly
and beyond.
nostalgia, and I take people sometimes back to their own childhood or the youth. After all, having gone through 3 generations of readers, um, I you sometimes get letters from abroad, from say someone in America or England, or someone who's feeling homesick for India, and they've gone to some length. My books are not always available there because actually,
Mhm.
basically, they are published here mostly,
Mhm.
and but they go to the trouble of getting one, and because it takes them back to India, to their growing up years, to the places they've lived in the hometown, things they've missed. Because there is an element of nostalgia there, I think, and
Right.
I
longing
think
for
that
the past, longing for the good things in the past. The things that uh, you remember with affection. Mm.
also let's not forget that the connect with the author is so intimate even though you never meet him
Yeah.
or I mean this I can't believe
Yes.
this has happened for example, but wherever the
Mm.
hell you are, some hamlet in middle India or wherever you are, some other generation,
Mm.
probably doesn't even speak good English, but just fascinated by the
Mm.
tale, and it gets into you, and the author's philosophy and mind is sort of part of
Well,
you. It's almost
yeah, I put a lot of myself into it. In fact, all of myself in a way. Mm. So I think that's perhaps what makes it a little different. Mm.
Yeah.
Mm. So
So, Abbas,
I'm not.
there
I'm
are
not
some
the
good
king of
Indians in
letters.
India.
That's
Remember
right.
that.
I never doubted that for a second.
Okay. Ruskin Bond, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. We have to wrap it up here. Again, the book is
Cyrus,
called
thank you, Abbas.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Song
you
of the
for
Forest.
saying such nice things about that book. I think my publisher is going to be very happy.
I have tried to be careful not to overpraise you and sound like one of those flatterers. So I just because that would just upset and offend you. I know you're a man of class.
Well,
But one request, if it's possible, can you say my name is Bond, Ruskin Bond, like Sean Connery, or that would be
Sean
great.
Connery, I'm not a good actor. I tell
He's got that lish and that Scottish burr, or whoever,
The
whichever one, Roger Moore.
name's Bond, Ruskin Bond.
There you go.
Wow. That's the new Bond. We've got
Yes,
the new
that's the
Bond.
new
Abbas,
one.
breaking news exclusive here on our podcast. We have it. We have the next guy. Listen, a lot of respect. We bow to you, sir. What a legend. What an awesome human being, and really great to hear from you. And we will push this book in our little way as much as we can.
Oh, so
Go out
thank
and
you.
buy it, people. All right.
Thank you so much.
Bye bye.
Bye
Bye.
then. All the best.